Hi everyone, welcome to Rendering Teardown section. My name's Simon and today we're going to deal with this really dynamic and saturated rendering. So on the overall, the image, I really like the composition. As just said, it's really dynamic and the way it framed the building is really nice. And yeah, the foreground is quite interesting and sort of well done, and I quite like there's a good hierarchy of the different levels of depth that an image should have. So on this aspect, it's really well done. One thing that would change right away, I think, is the underside of the bridge we have here. Well, there's two things. The first one is that it could actually be really interesting to have it way more detailed than it is right now. Even though it's just like maybe a concrete structure, there's supposed to be more stuff happening, like beams and like different textures and things like that. So the only thing I did for the moment on the bridge here is to actually add the texture that was lacking here, because for some reason it got cut away, and burn and dodge, like change the level so that it's like darker, because obviously if you keep it too bright, you sort of look at it quite a bit, because it does takes quite a bit of the space in the image. But if you darken it, you sort of reorientate the whole focus on the brighter area of the image. So that's what we're looking for. So that's like tiny change here. Second thing I'm wondering about is about this tree here. First there's this sort of greenish halo here that is kind of disturbing, but the biggest issue I have with it is that I don't really get the scale, because we're under a bridge, so obviously we cannot really have like a tree that would be sitting here, like on our left, and be that way. Because the thing is, the way we look at it, the branches are branching outward, like towards this. So basically, the trunk has to be on our side. So this is not really like, I don't really think it's possible. And the thing is, if this is not the way it's supposed to be, but it's just supposed to be like a tree that is somewhere around here, then this is not the right settings and the scale is completely wrong. Either way, I'm not really convinced by this. The discrepancy between like really mineral and rough material and sort of more subtle vegetation is interesting, but I think there's something that needs to be done, because it's not really that convincing at the moment. So yeah, the other thing I think that would be interesting to work on is the overall mood and the overall colors. Obviously the idea of the building is to have like really bright and saturated patterns and colors here, so that we're not going to touch, of course. The thing is, to better emphasize this aspect, what we need to do is to sort of calm down the overall saturation in the rest of the image. So what I would suggest is, if we were to keep this tree here, is to actually change the saturation here, so that we emphasize the building itself. Also, I would maybe do it a little bit here, maybe not that much, but just tone it a little bit down, because you cannot have like saturation, especially when you're dealing with like blues and things like that. You cannot really have like super saturated green, because, well, first, it's not really how it is in real life. Like, it always looks a little bit fake, so you want your vegetation to be like, have a color that exists basically. The other thing that could be fun is to also maybe change, just use the photo filter here. It's quite straightforward, but maybe it could be interesting because the thing is, our sky here, not the sky, the sun, sorry, is quite low. So we cannot really have like this sort of bluish color. We need to have something a little bit more towards orange. It works quite well with this. And this way we sort of emphasize more the building and how it's like special, if I may say, and how it sort of stands out in the context. Another thing regarding this, like it's tiny detailed, but I'm going to do them right now, is that the green wall here are extremely sharp, so it's not really convincing. So what thing you can do is that the same way when you have like a grass area, you can use the grass brush here. What you can do is the edge of the paint, sorry, the edge of your green wall here by using different brushes that sort of like vegetation, like in foliage. So that way you have something a little bit more blurry and that sort of is a little bit more like what we would expect from a green wall to look like. The other thing, and that's something that I can't really get my head around at the moment, is that there's something weird happening with the shadows in the foreground. What I mean by that is that here you can see there's like a stone wall and it has a cast shadow here. The thing is, it's really hard to understand where, well, first where this light comes from, since this building is here, so you don't really get, like, we would think the sun is a little bit too low, but maybe that's possible. The thing is, when we are dealing with this part of the wall, we don't have any cast shadows, so that's something that is missing, and that makes this wall not really anchored in the ground. Second thing you want to have a look at is, and you can see it here, the shadow of this dude here is not really like, first we should have the shadow of this guy that is somewhere around here, and second thing, you can see it here, shadows don't, well, you cannot have a shadow on this side of the sidewalk because obviously the shadow is casting this way, so it stops here and comes back here, and here you're gonna have the cast shadow of the sidewalk. So that's a tiny change, but still worth mentioning. And I guess the little problem I have is the scale in general, because we don't really get, like, we're not really sure where this building stands compared to this wall. Is it like 2 meters away, or is it like 50 meters or something like that? We do have someone here, but if we compare him or her, whatever, to these guys, it's as if this was like a really long distance. Whereas if we look at it like that, we're not really, it doesn't feel as if it were this far. So there's something a little bit complicated to understand in terms of distance. It might come also, like, so this could be sort of adjusted by using levels and making your foreground stand out. So this is your foreground, this is your foreground. What you can do is you change and you just paint your building, keeping in mind the distance there is between you and the point you're painting. Basically what you could use also in the level of, in the alpha mask of the level is your Z depth pass, if you have it. So something like that. That could sort of, like, the idea basically is to enhance the depth level. So say, like, there's quite a difference if I do that or do that. Here it looks further, And if I even want to change it again, I could do that. And if I do something like this, this would mean the building is again further. What you sort of need to do in terms of a theory is to, so if we compare it, say we have this or we have that, it's quite different in terms of distance. I would go with this one, I guess, but whatever is actually the case is best. Not the same mood, but I think it works quite well. I think we're done here. So yeah, all these final thought is gonna be regarding the reflection in general. I think it would be more interesting to have something a little bit something a little bit more interesting to reflect here. Here we're only having like, well, and that's the thing, is like we're having a perfectly blue sky, whereas obviously our sky is not like that. So either at least have like some clouds, or actual architecture would be interesting. Like if you could get a reflection of the bridge that is going up, or something that is a little bit more interesting. It could be actually like something that could be done to actually have it a little bit, is to use some burn and dodge. I'm not sure how that's gonna work, but it could be, you know, like to, even though you don't have like the sun going that way, it's just to sort of emphasize a little bit the fact that we're having a highly reflective surface here. So obviously I'm doing it a little bit too much here, but you get the idea, so that you understand that, yeah, basically this is reflective and this is not. And you have to play a little bit more with the difference between the two kind of materials here. Also, I guess it's also part of the hue that we have here, which is bluish, and we don't really have, well, blue anymore here. This is like, there are some artifacts at some point, but this is really just tiny details. So yeah, that's pretty much it, I guess. It would, yeah, also could be fun to do, and I'm really gonna stop there then, is to if you have like, you know, some sort of edge, is to emphasize an edge that is sort of directly hit by the sun. Well, here it's definitely not using the best tool here, but something like that. Obviously you don't want it to go over your, and what could be, there we go. Get rid of that. So yeah, you get the idea. A little bit different, but sort of emphasize the building a little bit more. Also, I wonder why it's not done here a little bit as well. And final thing I had in mind, I'm going to do it really quickly, but it's really just an extra that it's maybe not necessary, is maybe try to use a lens flare, but in a really subtle way, not like the usual kind. So if you use lens flare, have something, say around here, movie, just go with 35 millimeters. We have that. The thing you do instead of keeping it that way is you fill your image in black and then re-click on lens flare, or like redoing this last filter you did, so you have it that way. Then you set it to screen there, and then you can blur it quite a bit and then reduce the amount of the effect so that it's not completely overwhelming and ruining your image. So something like that. Hopefully you learned interesting things in this image. end this teardown, and I'll see you in the next one. Thank you guys. Bye.
And you